Welcome back to the Best PT Podcast. This is episode 5.3, Wound Interventions. Let's begin with the red, yellow, black grading system. This is a table from the book Comprehensive Wound Management. So red wounds indicate pink granulated tissue. The goal of these wounds is to protect the wound and maintain its hydration. Yellow wounds are moist, yellow, slough. The goal here is to remove the exudate and debris and absorb the moisture. And then finally, black wounds indicate thick black eschar. The goal here is to debride them. Talking more about debridement, we have selective and non-selective or mechanical debridement. Selective debridement is the removal of non-viable tissue only. Sharp debridement is the use of scalpel, scissors, or forceps used for thick, adherent necrotic tissue. Enzymatic debridement is the topical application of an enzyme-laced cream used when natural debridement is not effective. Natural debridement or autolytic debridement uses the body's own healing capabilities to remove non-viable tissue with the support of transparent films. Non-selective or mechanical debridement is the removal of all tissue, viable and non-viable. We have wet to dry dressings, a very, very painful technique of allowing moistened gauze to dry over a wound before removing. Wound irrigation is the removal of tissue via pressurized fluid such as with pulse lavage. And hydrotherapy involves whirlpool agitation. Too much whirlpool can result in wound maceration, destroying viable tissue. Different modalities for wound healing. Negative pressure wound therapy, also known as vacuum-assisted closure or wound vacs. These are indicated for any wound that will not heal via primary intention. They are contraindicated in those with vascular insufficiencies, cancer, or large amounts of necrotic tissue. Insurance usually only pays for a wound vac on an outpatient basis. Hyperbaric oxygen is the use of a chamber or mask to inhale 100% oxygen to reduce edema and hyperoxygenate tissue. And growth factors are naturally occurring protein factors that stimulate cellular activity. Different types of dressings. There's a great table on page 225 of the Therapy Ed course manual. This is the manual you get when you attend a Therapy Ed live course, but you can find them for pretty cheap on places like Amazon and eBay. There's a great table on page 225 that describes what I'm about to say very succinctly. So dressings, hydrocolloids, the purpose, they're gel-forming polymers that absorb exudate. Advantages, they add moisture to a wound and provide absorption, but disadvantages, they can cause maceration and wound rolling. Hydrogels retain moisture on superficial and partial thickness wounds. The advantages are they reduce pressure and pain and add moisture to a wound. Disadvantages, they cannot be used on wounds with drainage. Foam dressings are two-layer dressings. A hydrophilic or water-loving base covers the wound base and a hydrophobic outer layer. This allows exudate to be absorbed from the wound up into the foam. The disadvantages are that removing these dressings can damage the wound bed, and they are very difficult to inspect. Transparent films are water-resistant adhesives that allow oxygen in, but not water or bacteria. Advantages: add moisture to a wound and easy visualization of a wound. Disadvantages: water cannot easily leave, possibly causing maceration. Gauze can be impregnated with burn creams or antibiotics and can be used to debride. Advantages: they're very cost-effective. Disadvantages: they can dry and adhere to a wound bed, and they're very permeable, which increases the risk of infection. And finally, alginates are seaweed extract that are highly permeable and absorptive. Advantages: great for draining infected wounds. Disadvantages: require frequent dressing changes and secondary dressings. Moisture and occlusion. Remember that dry wound beds slow the healing process and can also lead to cracks or fissures that further complicate wound healing. And moist wound beds attract macrophages sooner and in greater numbers, which facilitates natural debridement and healing. Different types of skin care. Moisturizers are useful for dry skin to prevent cracking and fissuring of skin near a wound. Moisture barriers or ointments protect surrounding skin from a heavily draining wound or incontinence. Liquid skin protectors create a thin plastic film that protects skin from adhesive-related damage. Skin cleansers are pH balancing, beneficial for perineal cleansing. They're less drying than a traditional soap. And finally, wound cleansers can reboot the inflammation process in a wound and remove foreign materials, exudate, as well as dry blood. That's it for episode 5.3, talking about wound interventions. Episode 5.4 will talk about burns. As always, the outline will be in the show notes. Thanks for joining.